Chapter 32. Titan Facility, Stade, Switzerland. Themis sat patiently whilst her hair was being expertly coiffured. She was staring at her reflection in the mirror whilst considering tonight's meeting with her fellow Titans. They were all in attendance. Such was the gravity of the news she'd have to impart that for the first time in her life she was unable to think on a linear level. So this is fear, she concluded. Standing, she straightened her back and walked out the door. Descending the stairs, she felt the weight of her evening dress mirror her mood. Holding her head high, she'd had no option but to share what she knew. Speculation had turned into fact, and the consequences would shake their organization to its foundations. All eyes turned to her as she entered the large reception room and gave a salutary nod in respect. Each Titan took a seat at the large gilded table. Themis began without hesitation, looking at each one of them in turn. You'll appreciate why you've not been given any details before this meeting. The sensitivity of the information I have prevented any other recourse. There is dissension within our number. The other Titans remained quiet. A child has been born, naturally. A male child. The room remained silent as they each absorbed the enormity of the implications. She continued. We will ascertain his whereabouts, alive or dead, at which time the Titan responsible will be eliminated for treason. Females will immediately submit themselves after this meeting for examination, at which time, if nothing is discovered, we will have narrowed the person responsible down to 6. Themis looked at her fellow Titans. Whoever you are, you're to have your affairs in order and your replacement ready. That is all, she finished solemnly. As Themis stood, the remainder of the Titans also stood and quietly filed out. There was no need to question the validity of the claim. They each knew Themis would have been particularly thorough in obtaining the facts. The child had been the result of a premeditated decision by the traitor. The Titans had never entertained spontaneity or lust. They were incapable of such feelings, it having been bred out of them long ago. Carnal weakness was abhorrent to them. To take such an unprecedented and dangerous step could only equate to one thing. One of them had made the decision out of curiosity, or worse, love. Its unquantifiable force that even they'd had to concede was virtually impossible to eradicate, occasionally permeated and percolated through their DNA. It was done. Themis had already calculated the fallout of such a revelation. Whoever the mother or father, their entire bloodline would be erased, and every living recipient that carried their genes would need to be wiped out. Centuries of work destroyed. She allowed her dress to be removed before lying back on the table and placing her ankles into the cold metal stirrups. It had taken less than 2 hours before Chios read the inevitable news he'd anticipated. The Titan responsible was male. He'd planned for years knowing this day would come. He'd just hoped it wouldn't happen in his lifetime. His death was his only exit strategy. He'd planned a combustible affair, knowing what they were capable of if anything were to remain of him. Chios's mind turned to the love he shared that remained unquenchable. Her aphrodisiacal alchemy had crept within him and bloomed. All his logic and reasoning had been no match for its intoxication of his sterile mind. It had been an onslaught he'd been ill-equipped to handle. Instead of accepting his fate all those years ago, Kios had systematically eliminated everyone that might have conjectured an association between him and her. But that trail would soon be discovered. He had a small window of time in which to resign her to her fate. A single tear fell down his cheek. He'd be gentle. She was an innocent. She knew nothing about the organization to which he belonged. She didn't even know his real name. He'd kept everything from her, even the fact that their son had been born alive. He'd had the boy placed in Phelps's care. It had been an irrevocably stupid idea, born out of curiosity as to whether Rika would be as smart as him. It hadn't been to protect Rika, as he'd experienced the unrecognizable blast of jealousy that the boy might one day supplant him in her affections. His only fear was if he could reach her first.